Hello, everybody. Yes, I was not lying when I said I would be putting out another one of these videos soon. This is the real test one where I'm just gonna be talking about something, see how y'all react to it. Also, do you like the background game choice? It's modded Plants vs Zombies. I'm playing it a lot lately, and that is actually what the topic is today. Just because I find it very interesting, how many mods there are for Plants vs Zombies 2. Now, I will say the fact that these exist at all is very understandable. Because if you've ever played the base game of Plants vs. Zombies 2, you'll know that number one is fairly unbalanced, and number two, there's a lot of like pay to win stuff in it. And while I do understand that, it is still like unfortunate to see, especially considering how respected PopCap was when they came out with the first game. Now, honestly, I wouldn't like say I'm the biggest PvZ fan ever. I don't play PvZ games that often, but I still enjoy it. I think it's fun every once in a while. Just hop on to, specifically this version. I'm playing Reflourished, in case you were wondering. I've played others in the past. Like I played Eclipse back before it got like completely canceled, and that was really fun. I do miss Eclipse. I want that to come back. Actually, I do think there's a fan made continuation for that, so that's good. But yeah, no, there's a lot of really hard work that's put into it to basically make like a better version of this game that kind of fell off because of just development decisions. Like, in case you're unaware, in case you don't know what exactly I'm referring to, if you look at any like new additions to Plants vs Zombies 2, right, you can see like the quality of it decreases over time. Because back when they started releasing like plants that cost some money, premium plants as they're called, they weren't too awful. Some of them were a little bit too strong, but overall, it wasn't the worst thing in the world. You didn't need to fork over money to them anyways, so not many people really cared about it, at least from what I saw. But then over time, it was either they would release a plant that was just completely broken, like would entirely invalidate one of like the regular story mode plants, or it would be completely useless. And there wasn't really much of an in between. There aren't very many, at least not that I can remember. There aren't very many like mediocre premium plants. And another thing came along with that is this is a more recent thing. This wasn't initially visible, but the animation quality of them dropped severely over time. They started off being pretty faithful to the style, but then over time, it just got like slowly worse and worse and worse until eventually, like, you barely even looked like Plants vs Zombies anymore. They were, and I'm pretty sure it's because they started outsourcing the animation, which I understand. You have a big game, eventually something like that's gonna come to it, but it's still really disappointing to see. Because I remember I used to play Plants vs Zombies too, like when it was still a new thing, back when they only had the four worlds and stuff like that, and I really enjoyed it. It is a very fun game in its heyday. But then, yeah, it just became less and less fun, and that's where all these modders came in, and I do really respect like what the modding community has given to this game, because a lot of these mods are balanced so much better than the base game. Like, it feels completely fair if there's like a hard level in a mod. Meanwhile, the base game, if there's a level that's hard, it's usually because they put in the most like absolutely BS combination of zombies ever. Which that's just to match with the overpowered plants that they add. They're meeting up to their own standards at that point. And it's kind of to be expected whenever you have a mobile game running for long enough that eventually there's going to be some form of like aggressive pay to win or like too much power creep. It usually happens. And that's one of the reasons why the only mobile game that I really play anymore is Battle Cats, because yes, that game has power creep, but the thing is, you do not need to spend any money to have fun on that game. Like they have designed it in a way where the free to play stuff can be just as good as the paid stuff. Like, sure, it's nice to get an Uber Super every once in a while, but you don't need them to beat the game. As long as you are actually able to understand the game's mechanics and get good at it, you do not need Ubers at all. The thing is, a lot of people don't actually understand that about that game. I might make a video talking about Battlecast in general and how it's kind of misunderstood. But that's not the main point. What I'm trying to say, right, is that the amount of just sheer like game design knowledge and effort that gets put into mods for this game is genuinely pretty incredible. I have a lot of respect to anyone who makes PvZ2 mods, just because like you're taking something that started off good but became broken over time and returning it to like its former glory, and that I just think that's pretty awesome. That takes a lot of work. Clearly, you could tell a lot of work went into it with like when they add new plants or stuff like that that actually look good and like fit into the style, or when they like add new worlds or stuff like that. I want to play Altverse at some point because I know that's adding a new world soon, and that looks really, really high quality. But yeah, no, it's just awesome to see. And I'm sure I'm not aware of like every single mod. I'm sure there's a few that I just don't know about yet. But I would love to see more. Like, if there's any like super underrated ones, I might be on the lookout for those because I think once I finish Reflourished, I want to go try some other ones, like that Eclipse remake that I mentioned because I remember liking Eclipse a lot. But then there was stuff with that. I'm not going to get into that, controversy stuff. But yeah, it's just a neat little thing that I have discovered semi recently, and I think more people who liked the original Plants vs Zombies game should kind of acknowledge this. There's a lot of like really good modding communities for games like Terraria, Minecraft, obviously, the survival games mostly. A lot of modded survival games that have a lot of effort to put into them, and this is like honestly on par with those, I would say. Like this is the Calamity mod of Plants vs Zombies, and I know that's kind of a goofy statement out of context, but like it makes complete sense if you actually know both of the things that I'm referencing here. But yeah, no, that's it. It's a very simple thing. I'm not necessarily like adding much by saying this. I just think that more people should kind of like give it the respect it deserves. So if you ever want to, if you have an Android phone specifically, it's pretty easy to mod on an Android phone. Or if you don't have an Android phone, get BlueStacks, because BlueStacks is relatively self-explanatory, unless you have to turn on virtualization for your machine, which I had to do. But I'm not going to get into that. that was a whole process. Yeah, no, it's easy to do. It's worth the effort because you'll get a fun game out of it. And I just think you should go try it out. Why the heck not? But anyways, I hope you all enjoyed. This is kind of the style of video that I want to go for. Just random little topics. And I hope to see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.